Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel today. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different with regards to Gran Turismo 7 and some of the features and things that we would like to be included in GT7. I'm going to run through in this video. In the background at the moment you can see it's the trailer that we've probably seen 1,000 times before, and I'm going to go through some of the basic things I feel that GT7 needs to be incorporated into the core gameplay. Also the options within customizable lobbies, stuff like this. I feel it's very important, along with some of the features that we pretty much have confirmed. We'll mention them. But yeah, one thing I really want you to do as you're watching this video is let me know in the comment section things that you will want in this game. Now obviously these are my things I'm going to say, but I'd like to see some of the suggestions from other people within the community just to get an idea of other things I will possibly miss out on, and then we can maybe do a further video in the future to go through some of the more popular choices that I may have missed in this video. But yeah, let's go through and start off with the very basics, the obvious choices that pretty much I think most people will want, and then I'll go into some of the more in-depth changes that I think need to be implemented into this game. So first up, it is the obvious one, the dynamic time of day, and with that I think needs to come dynamic weather. Now we look like we have confirmed already in the trailer that dynamic time of day is going to be included, as you can see from this clip that we've slowed down so you can see the clouds moving, the time of day, the sun moving position. So this is automatically, I think this is confirming that 24-hour cycle should be in GT7. But what it does not confirm is that there will be dynamic weather in the game. Now this is along with dynamic time of day. I think I put them together as the category. They need to be in there together, I feel. If you're going to have dynamic time of day, I think you really want to be pushing dynamic weather into the game also. Now there is so many benefits in a racing game to have this. If you've ever watched our streams on Assetto Corsa ACC, you will have seen some of the races when it starts dry and then it starts raining and then there's all chaos. People pit, some people don't pit, the track doesn't go fully wet, some people get benefiting from it, some people risk it with strategy, and this I think for FIA could be a game changer. I mean, just imagine an FIA race, 35 to 40 minute FIA race, it starts raining halfway through just as you're about to come in, maybe just you've already changed tyres and you feel you have to go in for them intermediate tyres. Some people don't pit, you go in for the tyres, you gain because the track actually gets wet enough, or vice versa, you go in the pits and it doesn't really go fully wet, half the field gain, half don't. It would add an element of luck into the game, but you know, racing is all about strategy, and I think these changes could be a game changer for Gran Turismo Sport. I could only imagine if they can get the visuals right, if they can get the wet weather really dynamic, and with that sun, you know, coming through onto a wet track, it could be unbelievable with the graphics that Gran Turismo has and is known for. So let's fingers crossed that dynamic weather and dynamic time of day will come together in GT7. I think it is very important that these two features are included in GT7. Okay, next up is again a pretty obvious one. It is the tracks within Gran Turismo 7. We already have confirmation that Trial Mountain and Daytona will be included, as you can see from the screenshot above me. But there is so many more tracks that are missing from GT Sport. We have High Speed Ring, you know, Deep Forest Raceway, Grand Valley Speedway. Some of these tracks, Autumn Ring. These tracks are what made us all love Gran Turismo to start with. Apricot Hill Raceway, Midfield Raceway, so many different tracks that we all experienced, we all enjoyed. I've missed out more there. You know, we have some of the city tracks that we haven't even spoke about, and then we have some of the real life tracks that are still missing from the Gran Turismo on PS4, and hopefully we'll transition to GT7. We have Twin Ring Motegi, you know, we have Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a track that I absolutely loved, that I was quite surprised was never on GT Sport, and obviously Silverstone. Now Silverstone was, I believe, scheduled to be releasing on GT Sport. My guess is that Sony stepped in towards the end of Gran Turismo Sport's life cycle and said they need to change all attention to GT7 and focus on that, hence why GT7 is supposedly a launch window game. Now we don't actually have the launch, but my personal guess is around March 2021 for the release of the game. Now there has been rumours recently of a date, but that is my current guess. But yeah, we need some of these tracks back in the game. Look at the variety that was on GT6 and etc. and previous games. I would love to have GT7 with some of these more original tracks. Deep Forest Raceway, you know, some of these tracks would make GT7 a much better game and bring back some of the original players that loved the Gran Turismo franchise back in the day. And this leads me on to cars within the game. Some of the classic cars that were on the older Gran Turismo games. I would love to see some of these old school racing cars back into GT7. Now, I do understand a lot of people want road cars. I would like to see more variety of open wheel cars. Some of the older classic cars returning to the game. Now, the problem with this will be licensing, and also having the ability to get a model of these cars might be a bit difficult now. Some of these cars are obviously rare, but it would be amazing if we could bring back some of these cars. And also, the big one is I would love to see some of the brands that were associated with the older Gran Turismo games returning to GT7. Lotus, for example. This would be great if we could get Lotus back into the game, along with some of the rarer models of cars back into GT7. I would love to see this. Now, I do understand a lot of people are going to say, well, we want road cars. I get that, and I'm sure that will happen. But for me, personally, I want to see more race cars. Some of these cars that I used to love driving on the original games, on, you know, from all the way back in GT1 all the way through to GT5, etc. I would love to see some of these cars return to GT7, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that it will bring back memories from older games. I can only imagine with the modelling of GT7 and the visuals how amazing some of these cars would be to drive on GT7. Next up, I think that physics needs to be slightly improved. Now, I don't mean a massive overhaul. I think Gran Turismo Sports physics really hit quite a sweet spot for the, you know, the player that wants to take racing quite serious, and also someone who just wants to jump on and have fun. Now, I love the approach that they go with the default setups for FIA. I do not want anything like that to change. I think they've gone with the right approach there. But physics, there is a few areas, mainly suspension, I feel, where the physics could be improved. And what I'm going to include in the physics is stuff like the slipstream, because it is still kind of in that area, and I think slipstream is a bit too strong on Gran Turismo. Even now, I think the 8/10 range is pretty solid. I think anything up to a second is okay in terms of distance that you pick up the slipstream. But what I think at the moment is probably 50% too strong on GT Sport. I would like to see maybe it draw back to like that 50, you know, if it was 50% the strength of what it is now, I think you'd see a much better experience on the game where overtakes would still be possible, but it would require that, you know, a little bit more of actual skill. At the moment, the current slipstream kind of works once you're in within 8/10 range. It's almost like a DRS in the F1 where it doesn't actually take much skill to do an overtake. So I would love to see that incorporated into Gran Turismo 7, or even an option to have it lower, maybe FIA lobbies including with a lower slipstream setting, and then also public lobbies being able to change that, which we're going to go into more in depth later on in this video to do with lobby settings and stuff that I would like to see happening in that. But yeah, 100% slipstream I think could be altered slightly to make the racing a little bit more fun. Now, other areas with the physics, I'm going to include tyres. Now, we currently have obviously a broad selection of tyres. Normally you'll have 2 or 3 available in an FIA race, and one big problem that I find with the tyres is what you'll see is whenever we have 2 to 3 tyres available, the majority of the time people are going to run a very short amount of laps on the hard compound tyre depending on the race distance, etc. For example, this one we actually ran the medium tyre, I think it was, for a little bit longer than what we normally would. But if the hard tyre would have been available for this race, I'm pretty sure that most people would have done 1 lap on the hard tyre. Now, the reason for this is because the differential between each tyre, in my opinion, needs to be closer for Gran Turismo 7. We need the gap between each tyre to be a little bit closer. We don't need a massive amount. Just, I would say, if for example with the soft, medium and hard currently now, maybe leave the soft how fast they are, move the medium in between the delta gap of the soft and the medium, and then make the hard tyre the medium tyre in terms of the pace that they give, because the hard tyres are pretty horrible in this game anyway. I think what that would do is it would open up more strategy in races, because people would actually be tempted to use the tyre, and also make sure that the tyres degrade at a slightly slower rate for these. Now they do obviously already degrade at a slower rate, but they tend to slide. If you're on hard tire and you lose a bit, they slide more than what I feel they should. You should have a little bit more ability to do that endurance aspect of the tires. So little things for Polyphony to take on note. I'm sure they're aware of things like this, and hopefully they are going to implement stuff like this into GT7, because it could make for possibly one of the best racing games ever. And I don't take that lightly. I genuinely think that Gran Turismo 7 has the potential, if it incorporates a lot of what we're talking about today in today's video, to be one of the greatest games ever made. I absolutely love GT Sport. There is areas that it needs to improve, and we're going to talk about another area in a moment now. Okay, so a lot of people probably would have been waiting for us to mention this next one, and it is the obvious one, the penalty system. Now, Gran Turismo's penalty system has evolved from the day one to now many ways. There has been months when it's been pretty okay. There's been months when it has been absolutely a nightmare for like pointless contacts. As you can see, this is the footage you're seeing right now is taken from a previous video on the channel that I did. And you'll see some of the penalties that the game has given out over the course of its life has been nothing short of a joke. I mean, the fact that they thought it was okay to give penalties out of 10 seconds because you get bump drafted from a car behind was quite worrying. And it's something I hope that, in my opinion, I would completely remove this current penalty system and start with something a little bit more along the lines of iRacing, maybe including something else in there as well. But yeah, along the point system that iRacing uses, where contacts, track infringements, and when I say track infringements, I mean small cuts, ones that don't really gain you time, track extending by, you know, a few inches, you'll just get ×1 penalties, and you have a certain amount of these that you can build up during a race distance. If you exceed these, you get a drive through, or you are disqualified from the race. And I think if the amount that you were able to get was low enough for the type of distance that you were racing, I think this would put a lot of people off from actually wanting to even wanting to risk some of these things. You'd probably come across a situation where people would drive a lot more sensible, and I would like them to incorporate that into even lobbies. If we could set our own limit, if we create public lobbies and we say, right, there you're allowed 10 incidents of contact and infringements, or, you know, whatever it is, and based on, you know, bigger contacts giving you more penalty points, and then you'll get, you know, disqualified from that lobby for the day. It could be little things like this that could really work in the favour of public lobbies, making public lobbies more enjoyable as well. Bearing in mind that I also think they should incorporate a similar system along with the track limit. So the track limit should still count towards an overall one, maybe, but I think there should be also another one where, you know, 3 track limits infringements, maybe you then get some sort of penalty of some sort, or, you know, X amount, you get a drive through. Because the current situation now, you run wide on a track, you get dirty tyres, you lose time, and then you get hit with a penalty. It seems a little bit strange in my situation, and hopefully this can change in the future for Gran Turismo 7. I'm sure they'll be looking at ways at which they can do something to improve it. But yeah, let's hope that the penalty system, it's a big one. It needs looking at. Whether they stick with the same system for this game, or whether, you know, for GT7, or whether they move to a different system, I personally think they're going to stick with it and try and alter it around the current one they've got now, which might not be the best, but hopefully they can find some sort of middle ground where the penalty system works at least. Next up, we're going to be talking about the car classes. This is probably not going to be high up there on everyone's list, but I think it's an important one for the BOP within groups of cars, in particular Group 1 and Group 4, and also Group 2 at the moment. I think could definitely be improved and made more fun if they were to separate some of these car classes, have more car classes. I mean, we already have plenty of car classes through from M100 through to M1000 in the road car section, but when it comes to race cars, I feel that the game could benefit massively from incorporating a bit more variety. For example, Group 1 and Group 4. In particular, Group 4, I think, shouldn't have the four-wheel drive or the FF cars within Group 4. I would separate them into 2 separate groups, Group 4 FF, Group 4 four-wheel drive, and then have the FR and MR cars together. that could then be used in the manufacturer championship with the current Group 3 cars. Now, if you're missing cars, I'm sure there's options that Polyphony could go around and create concept cars and stuff like this that would make their life so much easier for the BOP in the future, and would also create a much even field. You wouldn't get this situation where if the tyre wear is low, you've got the FF dominance that happens in so many races. I think that this could benefit the game massively to go down this route and separate some of the car classes up. And also you've got the situation in Group 1 where we all know, if you've watched my channel, I have an opinion of Group 1 where I don't like the way you've got hybrids racing Group C cars, racing concept cars, racing VGT cars. These cars are not meant to be racing each other, and it causes incidents on the track when you've got a hybrid car accelerating behind a non-hybrid car. And with the penalty system that is on Gran Turismo, it causes massive issues. I really hope they can consider having more variety in the game for car classes, because more variety is good. You don't need to have all these cars racing each other. You can separate and put the Le Mans cars from different generations with a reasonable selection. I don't mind having, say for example, all the hybrid era from 2016 up to 2018 or whatever it is racing together. That for me is fine. The diesel generation racing with from 2011, I think it was 2012, that era, race them together. But I don't like having the Group C's racing the hybrids and two very different cars, which causes big issues. Now there are tracks where they BOP quite close, however it's going to cause problems on track, and I hope that they take this into account for Gran Turismo 7. Now this is something that I don't think they probably will, but it's just a suggestion that I wanted to get across in this video because I think that it would help the game. Another area is Group 2 with the 08 cars racing with the 2016 cars. The fact that the 08 cars have had to have been BOP'd and added another 100 horsepower to their base design kind of ruins their handling, in my opinion. I think these cars with the baseline 500 horsepower, they would make a great second class within Group 2, maybe like an 08 class or a 500 class or something like that. And it's more options for people to race, and I think it's more options then for when they do the sport mode races. We already know that sport mode is continuing in GT7, as it has been confirmed on their website, which you can see here now, where it does confirm that there will be tracks from previous Gran Turismos, along with classic cars that have not been featured in GT Sport, along with a more in-depth tuning menu. And then you can read there that if you love to race, practice and compete in the FIA Championship and Sport Mode. So these features will be returning, and this does actually lead us on to another thing within the things that I would like to be improved on GT7. And one of the big things is daily races and the options that we get within the daily races. So let's take a look at this section now. So the daily races within Gran Turismo Sport, which are technically now weekly races, actually brings me to my first problem with regards to the fact that they are now weekly and not daily. I actually think I preferred it when it was a daily change and it was something new all the time, but there are ways around making the weekly races work. But yeah, I still believe that this daily race feature, along with the FIA mode that we have to enter every week, has really progressed what we expect from online racing. It has really evolved and made console racers appreciate the match-based ranking system of online racing. When you drive with similar rated drivers, it makes for such a better experience. If you're clean, you tend to race with clean drivers, and if you're one of the faster drivers, you'll tend to race with faster drivers, especially in the FIA Championship. However, the variety has kind of got a little bit stale towards the end of the life cycle in the game. I think that limiting the options of races to only 3 for the daily races for a whole week was a bit of a problem. Now, I do understand the concern that you may not have the player base to go into more in-depth selections. However, when you think that the daily race A and B is on every 15 minutes and then daily race C is on every 30 minutes, I don't feel this is necessary. I feel there is ways around making this a better system. I feel that you could easily have daily race A every 15 minutes, keep it as a sprint race. Daily race B, keep that maybe as a slightly longer race but with no tyre wear or fuel, maybe like a 8-lap sprint race on every half an hour. Then you have your daily race C, which we've got there. It's on every half now. I don't see a problem with the structure of this, qualifying based on time trial. I would probably still keep that for the daily race C, but I'd have that maybe every hour. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make sure that we don't lose the player base in each race. So I think keeping that like that, the distance it is now around 20 minutes wouldn't be a problem. However, what I would then do is have a daily race D, which would be an FIA type distance race, maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes, around that distance, but with Super Pole qualifying, where you get one lap to set a time that starts you on the grid. No time trial, so people that try hard the time trial won't get the benefits there. You'll be able to just jump on and it will be down to that pressure lap qualifying. And this race could be on every 2 hours. I think that would keep the player base, something to race throughout the day with separation between the races that isn't then going to cause you an issue of lack of player base. And I also think that we could have maybe an endurance race, even if it was only once a day. Even twice a day, something like, say, like 4 p.m. and 8 p.m, or even just once a day at 8 p.m. I would definitely probably mix it up a little bit, have like a 4 and 8 p.m. race, something like that, just so you've got more variety for people that might be able to not be able to do certain races. But this race could be anything from a 60-minute race to a 90-minute race, multi-class on GT7, which is something that we really hope will be included in the game. We're going to get into that a little bit later on in this video. But yeah, a longer race with a proper qualifying, a 10 to 15 minute qualifying, proper strategy involved with it, maybe not so severe on the multipliers, on the tyre wear and the fuel, and make these races something that we can actually jump into and have a good long race on. Imagine a race online, 30 cars, hour and a half, multi-class. It could actually be brilliant, especially with the dynamic weather that we do hope is coming to this game, and with a dynamic time of day. I mean, if it was an hour and a half race, you could actually have the multiplier on the time of day set a little bit higher, so it started in the dark, progressed into the daylight. I would love to see this in GT7, and it is a feature I think that would work. And I think 5 daily races would be enough for GT7 if it did something along that structure. Like I say, you don't need to be on all the time in terms of every 15 minutes for the race A and B. They can be separated more throughout the day. And I think as long as you've got something there for someone to race, I think you'll get enough players in these races, especially with the a new release of GT7. I think it should have no issues with that. Next up is something that I feel needs quite a lot of attention, and I apologise if I am really going into depth on this video, because I want to try and cover everything, just so that if Polyphony see this video or anything, there might be something simple they can change. And first up, we're going to talk about the online lobby options that we have currently on GT Sport, which I'd like to be improved. Going through the options, you can see most are okay. Now, the first one that we really would like to be improved is the maximum participants in an online lobby. I think 16 is too small. I believe that the minimum I would be reasonably happy with would be 24 players in a public lobby. I would much prefer 30, if I'm brutally honest. I think 30 is what we want. It's what is expected. We've seen it on other games, especially on PC. And with PS5, I really think 30 players in a public lobby would make such a game changer to doing some endurance racing and stuff like that. In terms of the drive rating system they have on these lobbies, I think they've got that quite right. Maybe having some sort of progression of the public lobby system with the drive rating system might work a bit better as well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of that option, it's pretty much okay. Now, weather. Obviously, we want to be able to have the dynamic weather settings in here, where we can keep it dynamic or we can keep static. It'll be down to the individual. With time progression would be very important. An option to progress the time for doing a 6-hour endurance race as a stream or whatever, as getting the community in, starting it in the night, progressing it by times 3 or 4, whatever, so it's a 4-day cycle, something like that would actually be quite enjoyable. Number of laps, these issues, no real issue there. Grid start, no real issue there. Rolling start though, rolling start is something I feel needs big work on GT7. This is also for sport mode, FIA and daily races, etc. I think if you take a look at Assetto Corsa, ACC, they have absolutely nailed how they do a rolling start. Gran Turismos are quite broken. You only have to go to Spa and you'll see the big issue with the rolling start on that combination. you see people starting so far back. You know, this is something we need to get improved on GT7. Slipstream, I would like to be able to have, we've already talked about slipstream needs to be weakened, but maybe more options for a percentage which we can actually customize ourselves for public racing. So we can actually do a slipstream that we feel is acceptable. I don't see that being a problem, a slider from 0 to 100%. So we could have different slipstreams for qualifying of a race also, so that in a public lobby, we can ensure that people are not going to gain an advantage through qualifying. Now, I hope there is going to be an option to do a solo qualifying for Gran Turismo 7, for FIA and sport mode and stuff like this, because I feel it really needs it. At the moment, with the current slipstream on GT Sport, there are still issues. It is a little bit lower than what it used to be, but I feel more options is better. The more options you have for a public lobby, the better it is for everyone. Now, damage. We all obviously want more damage and more contact physics involved with GT7. You know, the ricochet system, the pinball physics, as we call it in our videos. I hope that can improve. I'm looking forward to GT7 and hoping that will be sorted. Now, tyre wear, these options actually we get now are pretty good. I don't think there's any issues with this. You know, the track grip reel, stuff like this, race fit, these are okay. No real problem with this. One thing I would like to point out with the overtaking system is I would hope that the DRS zones could be properly used in tracks, creating actual DRS zones for cars that have DRS, where you can only use DRS in them zones and not just everywhere on the track. Kind of seems daft to have a car with DRS that you can use the whole way around the lap. Let's change this to a proper zone within the track. Now, categories of cars, we've already talked about this. You can see from here, I don't have a problem with the road car classes having that many, but I believe trying to condense so many different groups of racing cars, and when I say racing cars, I mean the cars that are designed for racing, into such small amount of groups, I feel that is a problem. And also on this, with regards to this, we need a single make race option for our public lobbies and our own lobbies, whether they're private or public. Please, Gran Turismo, listen to us in this. It's quite frustrating having to tell people to get out of the car that they're in because they're in the wrong car. Just create a lobby, and if they haven't got that car, allow them to use a gift car. It can't be that hard to actually incorporate into the game. Come on, let's get this sorted so that we don't have to spend hours in lobbies explaining to people that they're in the wrong car and that we'd like them to get out of that car and get in the correct car. So yeah, I'm sure this can be done. It can be done in arcade mode where we can have a single make race. So I don't see there being a problem in Polyphony actually getting this option sorted into the public lobbies. Now, another feature for these public lobbies which I would quite enjoy being able to do would be able to force certain views within public lobbies. Now, I do not mean sport mode or FIA before we get them comments yet. I agree that everyone should use the view that they like in them races. However, for a public lobby, it'd be nice to be able to make sure that everyone is in the cockpit view. This would be a great thing, especially if VR is fully actioned into the game for public racing, for online racing and sport mode. And this actually brings us to another point with VR. I think it would be great if the VR support would be able to race in daily races and sport mode, as well as, you know, you could race with the VR in them races against people without. But it'd be nice maybe to have a separate mode where you can race with just people using the PSVR headset. That could be quite an interesting mode to add into GT7 as well. Now we're going to have a little look at other things. Obviously, we know that are coming to the game. We know that there are going to be much more modification options to this game. Now, how in-depth they go, but one thing I will say straight away is I really hope that they keep the modifications and stuff like that separate to public lobbies. I don't really want to see cars being able to race in sport mode that shouldn't be there along the lines of Project Cars 3. I don't really like that approach. I would like to keep the groups the way they should be and keep them options for, you know, tuning and stuff separate within public lobbies and obviously the single player. Now, another option I would like to see back on this game is the option to gift cars, and then we do see that option on the screen now. We see a gift, the gifts in the bottom right hand corner. That could mean multiple things. That could actually mean these are cars that are being gifted from the game to you. However, it would be nice if we have the option to gift fellow racers cars that we may have, you know, extra cars. You know, I'd love to do it on a stream where because I tend to play GT Sport a lot. It would have been great if we could have a stream where, at the end of the stream we gift out cars to people within the stream. They need a car, we can gift them it if we've got a double, because these are nice little things that you can do to help people out in the game. So hopefully gifting cars will be back in GT7. I'm fingers crossed this is a feature that can return for this game. Okay, next on the list is something that I think is fairly important for Gran Turismo 7 to get right, along with a better radar system, which you're going to see in action now on Assetto Corsa. I'm using Assetto Corsa Competition because I believe this is the best radar system there is. You might have heard me speak about it in previous streams when people complain why I'm not using the Gran Turismo one, which is right on the bottom, right where I'm not looking, to be honest. Have a look at where Assetto Corsa Competition puts the radar. If you look at the middle of the screen, right in your field of view, where you will be looking into the apex, when you're near a car, it will fade in and out. You'll see it coming into action when we go for an overtake. You'll see it pop in as we get closer to a car. It becomes more on-ghosted and more solid. So you'll see it there on the right side. It goes red when you're very close, yellow when you've got a bit of space, and it enables you to drive with so much more awareness on the track. It's almost seamless. It makes Gran Turismo's radar system look really silly, because I'm going to be brutally honest, I cannot use the Gran Turismo radar system on the view I use, because it just doesn't, you're not looking there. If you're driving really, if you're really pushing the limits, you shouldn't be looking at the bottom of the screen. Your eyes are looking into the distance, and that is why Assetto Corsa have put that radar system where they've put it, because it makes perfect sense. I've said this so many times before. And added to that, having the spotter system in there along with this radar system, this could make Gran Turismo 7 online play just that next level in terms of having the awareness. You'll know when you're 2 wide, 3 wide into a corner. It'll just give you a lot more ability to drive clean, and this is something that could work in harmony with the penalty system if they're going to keep some sort of penalty system on the game. I think it would enable people to understand when you've got a car to your left, to your right. Sometimes even when the view I use, you miss a car sometimes, but that's because I'm not, even if I have the radar system on Gran Turismo Sport, I wouldn't really notice anything because of the way I have my setup, the way it is right in the middle of the screen on the bottom. You're really not looking there. As you're approaching a corner, you're looking into the distance on the apex of the corner. You're always trying to keep an eye on the distance, and that is why they've put this radar system on ACC in literally the perfect position. So yeah, Gran Turismo, if you ever watch this video, take note of Assetto Corsa Competition A there with the radar system. It's the best radar system I've ever come across on a racing game. I think they've nailed it, and I'd love to have a spotter system in there for GT7 as well. And yeah, while still on the subject of kind of comparing it to Assetto Corsa Competition A, it would be amazing if they could get some sort of similarities in the way that Assetto Corsa Competition A does the sound effects of not only just the car engine, but also the brakes, the tyre sounds, the gravel underneath the car that you hear. It really does make a difference to the immersion within the game. Hearing the echoing sound of the engine as you go through like the stadium section on this game is unbelievable. If you're listening, Polyphony, try and really get that into GT7. It could be amazing. Okay, so as we're coming to the end of the video, we're just going to mention a couple other things that maybe it could be slightly improved on. Obviously, one of the big ones that I have not really mentioned in this video is the AI of the competition in single player Gran Turismo Sport. Now, I know Gran Turismo Sport was not really developed as a single player game, so I kind of understand the AI not being a priority, but I think if Gran Turismo 7 is going to take the series back to some of its roots, I think a lot of people are going to be playing it for the single player game, and I think for that reason AI needs to be a little bit more, 1, competitive, and 2, lifelike. The current AI on GT Sport is pretty awful. They do not drive with any common sense. They're basically like a train, whereas if you go to games like, again, we're going to mention it, Assetto Corsa Competition A, the AI on that game, if you race them on the 100% AI, not only are they close to esport level drivers, they also react very realistic to situations in a race. It kind of actually makes you feel immersed in it, because you feel like you're in an actual race with real people and it's not actually the AI. So that is something that I would love to see Polyphony aiming to achieve with Gran Turismo 7. Now, I understand these changes are probably, whatever they've done now is probably locked into the game, but it would be amazing for Gran Turismo 7 to have that improved AI, along with maybe going into more stuff to do with the single player. I would love to see an improved single player in regards to the license test. I used to love grinding out them license tests on the old Gran Turismo games, getting gold all the way through your licenses. It was pretty difficult. It wasn't the easiest task ever. Now, I'm not saying it was really, really hard. It was, perfectly doable, but I felt like it was a challenge. The problem with GT Sport was everything went a little bit too easy in my view. They tried to cater too much to casuals, I believe. I think that I understand that everyone should have a, ability to get something, but I feel there was a real challenge in getting gold on all licenses. Now, let's be honest, we don't have to make it so you have to get that to complete or progress, but something for everyone to aim for, to get that gold license on your a international way. I remember all them license tests from past. It would be something that I would definitely grind out and do. For example, I'd do streams on it and I'd do guides on it. I think it'd be really interesting for them to go back to that little bit more challenging aspect of the Gran Turismo single player. But as I said earlier in the video, I want you to let me know. I have probably missed off so many things that I've mentioned in streams because I do tend to ramble quite a bit when I get into stuff that I want improved for Gran Turismo 7. So what I would love to hear from you right now, again, like I said at the start of the video, is anything that you think GT7 should be incorporating. I've tried to be quite thorough in my video. I apologize for this being quite a long video, but I really wanted to get everything out there just in case there's something, a developer, someone involved with Gran Turismo comes across this video and says, well, that one wouldn't be too hard to do. That one could be implemented fairly easily. It's little things like that that they might not have thought of that, it's just added options within a game and features that might not be that hard to implement that could make a difference between a game being great to being one of the best games ever. So yeah, let me know in the comment section. Put your thoughts in there. Let me know what you think of the suggestions that I've said, and let me know your own suggestions as well, because I want to read them, and we may come back to this in the future after the game is out or something like that and see what's been included and what's not been included, and I'll maybe do a further video. So thanks again for watching, everyone. I appreciate everyone who spent the time to watch this video from start to finish. It has been a long one, but I wanted to get this out there and available, just so we can see what everyone's thoughts are and what they want from Gran Turismo 7, and hopefully we will be playing GT7 in the not too distant future, and we'll be enjoying one of the best racing games on console. In my opinion, probably it's got the potential to be the best. Remember, if you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button, and I'll be back with more live streams and videos in the future. Thanks again for watching, everyone.